It no longer does that announcement thing. We used to call that our Zoom collect. So, so Kathy and Jim, welcome. Thank you for being with us today. So we're going to talk about what your offerings for pastor resiliency. So tell us about it.
Thanks, Larry, and welcome everybody, and thank you for the opportunity to share a bit about your program, Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. This is a program of the PCUSA. You make it happen. Your gifts and the donations from your congregations makes it possible to have this program. We're based out of the headquarters of the PCUSA in Louisville, Kentucky, although Kathy is deployed staff down the road in Lexington, Kentucky. And we've had the opportunity to engage with Utica Presbytery multiple times over the last 3 years. So 3 to 5 years. So we've gotten to know each other well in terms of PDA resources, services, and programs. It's a growing pool of responders and organizations out there in response to disaster. And I think it's clearly in direct proportion to the number and severity of disasters that are happening all over the world. And I do wish that my retirement was being funded a nickel every time I heard somebody say, that has never happened here before. We've never had that kind of ice storm. We've never had that kind of flooding. We've never had that kind of drought, right down the list, including the hurricane season of 24, which impacted, oh my gosh, 5 states, 3 synods, a dozen presbyteries, and the California wildfires in January, which were historic in nature. And all of that is putting a lot more pressure on communities to both prepare, respond to, and recover from disasters. And there's the physical toll in terms of lost infrastructure, lost buildings, lost homes, sadly, loss of life. But there's also the spiritual and emotional toil of those who are on the front lines. And I consider faith leaders on the front line of disaster response, because you're embedded in your communities, you're a valued presence within your community. People know you, they know who you are. They may not worship at your facility, but chances are they may come there during the course of a year to vote, food pantry, Bible study, community gathering, whatever. And so there is that emotional and spiritual toll on faith leaders. Now, I mentioned there's a lot of organizations that are responding, and each one of them has their own niche or niches. And that's true of PDA. So there are several things that we're known for. We're known for our volunteer hosting sites, where groups are received from all over the country to go into disaster impacted areas to help with rebuilding. We're known for the grants that we offer to support immediate needs and long-term recovery. And we're known for our resilience work. We now, through the work of Kathy Riley, who you'll hear from in a second, have really established ourselves as one of the go-to organizations when there's the need to talk about resilience for community leaders, faith leaders, response personnel. And we have FEMA coming to us, the Red Cross coming to us, other denominations coming to us, long-term recovery groups coming to us. So we do have a staff person, Kathy Riley, who's been on staff with PDA since the hurricane season of 17. Before that, she was a volunteer and has taken what were already good programs and really made them great. So Larry invited us to be on the call to share a little bit about PDA, which I just did, but to talk more specifically about the resilience programming that we have for faith and community leaders. We have a whole suite of programs, and when Kathy begins talking, I'm going to drop two documents in the chat that you should be able to open and then save if you would like. So Kathy, with that introduction, please share with the group the programs and what we can offer.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to be here. Thanks to Larry for inviting us. I will be brief. There are lots of details in the documents Jim's going to pop in the chat. And so I'll talk briefly about what we typically do in person, and then the newer venture that that we're offering now on virtually. So we do a number of half-day and full-day resilience programs in person, focusing on relationships, self-care, and just staying resilient and mentally healthy and preserving our well-being during times of stress. So we do a lot of those programs. We're doing with faith leaders, and as Jim mentioned, all those other groups. And those are in person, half day. We schedule those usually 5 to 6 weeks out, and we'll tend to focus on either human-caused disasters or natural disasters, as Jim has mentioned, fires and hurricanes and things. So that's a piece that we do and are happy to offer for folks who are dealing with either just sometimes it's just the ongoing constant stressors of ministry, exacerbated by disasters and other kinds of events that happen in our communities. The newer venture that we've had communications with Larry about online, it really came about as a result of a couple presbyteries emailing me and Jim saying, and this has been, gosh, 6 weeks ago or longer, there is so much happening in the world right now. Our congregations, our faith leaders, our committees who deal with people who are immigrants and migrants to this country, or simply living here from another country, or look like they do, are obviously experiencing a great deal of stress since January. LGBTQIA and DEI issues have become fraught. Job loss, economic security, all these things were kind of listed in these couple emails from our couple presbyteries saying, can you help? So for some of you know that during COVID, we did a series, a couple years worth of Zoom meetings with presbyteries and congregation leaders across the country, organized by presbytery typically, about those stressors. And so we kind of created the model during COVID. This new kind of venture that we're looking at is starting actually tomorrow with our first one, to just hold 60 to 90-minute Zoom conversations with faith leaders who are grappling with all of the issues that folks are facing right now in their churches and their communities. In California, Jim and I were on Zooms with those folks when 3 days after the fire started in January. And it was maybe 2-3 weeks in when they could literally lift their heads up from the smoke and the fires and say, we have 2 disasters going on here. We've got immigrants and migrants who are really, really struggling and terrified, and we've got the fires. And we've heard that echoed kind of across the country. So we're offering Zoom conversations to focus on how some of these stressors have had an impact on faith leaders, on committees, on ministry, on mission committees, on congregations who were accustomed to hosting, say, migrant communities, and those folks are now gone. Or they had food banks and clothing banks, and people aren't showing up because they're afraid. Or the impact of job loss and economic insecurity for folks, especially those who are already on thin ice economically. So the focus is on gathering clergy and other faith leaders, community leaders, committee chairs, to just talk about how this has been, what the impact has been, what are the stressors, and how we can stand together, support together, keep resilience going, focus on what we're doing that can keep us strong in the midst of the stresses. Not to come in and be partisan or to talk about those kinds of issues, but rather what's the impact on the folks that are in the room, whether you're a minister, community or committee chair, whatever. What's the impact been? What's the stressors been? And some of the folks who've asked for these, and we've got, I think, 7 scheduled so far, has been, we don't really have a large immigrant population. We're not really struggling with job loss, but it's the conflict and it's the differing of opinions and it's the how do we live together in the midst of such turmoil when we've got purple congregations and purple presbyteries and lots of people with different opinions. How do we navigate some of these waters together? So that's our newest offering. We're calling them faith leader support conversations. We schedule them through the presbytery or possibly a synod, and just come together to talk about how it's been, what it's like, what we can do together to stay strong and stay resilient and stay spiritually grounded in the midst of some of these, what for many people is really terrifying kinds of factors. And one example that comes close to home, one of our national response team members, and we've got, I've lost track, 85-ish, so I'll just throw that number out. We have a lot of volunteers across the country. They do the work that I'm talking about. One of them has a son and daughter-in-law, both of whom have lost their positions as a result of budget cuts and changes, and also lost pensions. And so in one family, 2 incomes lost, 2 jobs lost. Everyone's looking for jobs that are the same kind of jobs, and they're not finding them. So those are some of the stories we're hearing. As I mentioned, some of our churches used to host immigrant communities. I've got 3 that I've served in this presbytery and beyond, and those immigrant community worships services are empty. They're just not happening because people are afraid. And so there's just a lot of issues and turmoils that are affecting us, and we want to come together and be supportive. And so those are what we're offering from the emotional spiritual care end. We have a colleague in PDA, Omar Chacon, who does our immigrant and migrant work. He's got a great resource paper that we're sending out to folks. He is the one who can help folks really get in the weeds of what does safe sanctuary mean, what does know your rights mean. He's going to be a resource for those very particular issues. Our focus is more on how's the impact on you, what's that been like, and how can we support one another. We found during COVID that simply bringing people together, especially when they couldn't be together, on Zoom, and realizing there's 5 people in my presbytery who are dealing with the same thing. And not only can we talk about it in this hour, we can get together and support each other as we go forward. And that's really one of the hopes of these conversations, is that it will more will grow from that as people try to navigate these waters together. So that is kind of in a nutshell what we do. Happy to answer questions about our general offerings that Jim is going to put in the chat, and that I've mentioned, or talk more about what PDA does in terms of emotional spiritual care in general. And I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to any questions or anything Larry wants to add.
Before we have questions, Kathy, let me just mention that I didn't intentionally mislead you from Utica Presbytery, but I'm having difficulty posting documents in the chat. It's not allowing me. So I did email them to Larry, and I trust that Larry will be able to get them out to you. So apologies for not getting them to you right away.
Yeah, we're trying to share them in the chat, and the chat is being highly uncooperative. So we'll email them to you after the call. Anyone got questions? Maybe you covered this while I was wrestling with Zoom, but if we wanted to have an event here, how would we go about doing that?
So it would be contacting me at this point, and if we want to do one of the Zoom conversations, it's really just a matter of emailing me. We talk about some dates and times, and I've got a great team of about 10 that are doing these, and we just schedule it at a time that works. And we've been doing an hour is the soft stop, because so many people we found on Zoom an hour and they're done, but we stay on for an extra half hour. And so if there are more questions or people who didn't kind of get to what they want to talk about, we'll go for 90 minutes total, and we just schedule them at whatever day and time works best for you. And the in-person, we want to do one of those, then again, it's emailing me, and we talk about dates and times, and I look at my team, sure, and we get it going.
We have a stated meeting of the Presbytery coming up at the end of the month, so I'll make sure we mention this at that meeting.
Great. Scott, were you going to say something?
Yeah, how's it being funded, or how are you? Are you just doing this for fun or free?
Fun and free, let's say. In terms of the events that we come for in person, Zoom is always nothing. There's no cost there. But unless a group or Presbytery has funds they can offer, and Jim will jump in here if he needs to, we come at the expense of PDA because we are funded by One Great Out of Sharing and donations. So we make the arrangements, the team comes in, gets their own hotel, and the only thing, if it's a full day event or there's a meal involved, then we'll talk with the host or the presbytery about that. But otherwise, there's no charge for the programs at all.
No, it's great. I would have made that pitch for a One Great Hour of Sharing. I didn't. I mean, I did in general, but for you guys specifically.
Yes, we have been historically named as one of 3 organizations that comes from One Great Hour of Sharing, Self-Development of People, and Presbyterian
Hunger program.
Hunger.
Yeah.
That is shifting some in 2026, but up to this point, that has been a great source of funding. And then individual donations and disaster-based donations come to PDA and support what we do. And as we always say, the prayers and goodwill of all of you.
How many of these have you done, or how frequently are you doing these now?
The new ones that I mentioned, or generally?
Well, I guess both.
Both. So the new ones is easier. Jim posted the description of these programs on a Wednesday morning, and we had, I think, 7 inquiries within 24 hours. So we are scheduled. The first one starts tomorrow in one of the presbyteries, and I've got 7 scheduled and more kind of on the books. And our other programs we kind of do consistently across time. We have spent most of our time in California this winter, late winter and spring, and then we've got programs scheduled for the Hurricane Helene aftermath, and a lot of that will be happening this summer and fall. So it really ebbs and flows with the disaster seasons. And for a time, I'll say we were really, really unfortunately busy with human-caused disasters. There seemed to be shootings and arsons and more shootings. And I'll put in just a word there, just so you all know, because most people don't. We do respond to human-caused disasters. We respond to ones that make the national news, like Buffalo and Uvalde and the school shootings. But we also respond if there's a church arson or hate crime involved, if there's a loss of life. We've had suicide and tragic or traumatic deaths in congregations. When presbyteries call us, we respond to those as well. So it doesn't have to be a national news event for Presbytery Disaster Assistance to get involved, and those calls go to Jim, and we kind of go from there. So lots, always
information.
Are there, you know, to cheat it a little bit, like what are like the top 3 things that you guys have found that, you know, I know it's a broad brush because of the different kinds of disasters and needs and such, but what have you found has been what's either what's been needed the most or what's been received the most? Maybe that's the way of looking at it from when people said, boy, that just really, you know, did it for me. You know, was there anything in particular that you find, or any common elements, you know, as part of this resiliency?
You know, it's funny. I was cleaning out some drawers the other day and found some of my old. We do an evaluation after every single event we offer in person, and I was reading some of those, and a couple of things stand out, Scott. One is the fact that PDA and the PCUSA came either in Zoom or in person and offered our presence comes out all the time. And those don't have to be Presbyterian people. They can be FEMA folks or long-term recovery folks. Just having people there donating and designating their time to the well-being and resilience of the folks in the room is by far and away the most common thing we see in terms of what struck them. Another piece is the community that they build themselves, whether it's on a Zoom, which has been amazing when we've done those programs, or in person, is them being together. We focus a lot in talking about what have you been going through? What has this season of your life been like? What are you doing that's been helpful? Sharing that with each other, that sense of community in the room, in the moment, has been another piece that people talk a lot about. And then I just talked to someone yesterday that we did a program for in February who said, I still use those tools you taught at that program in February. So we teach very specific, concrete resilience tools and we teach in a 3-hour program, let's say we might offer 4 or 5, and we only teach ones we use, and people will pick, maybe 1 or 2 of those that resonate and that stick, and they keep doing them. So those are the things that we notice: the ministry of presence, which you all know, showing up and caring, community, and then the resilience tools keep coming up as what people value.
Yeah, just to build on what you said, Kathy, thank you for mentioning the tools that we and practices that we share. We get a lot of comments that people find it very practical and accessible. So very little theory. When I first started in this ministry, you really almost had to spend a significant amount of time convincing people that they were in a stressful environment. Not me, I've got the faith of Jesus, faith in Jesus, I can get through this. But I think no longer is there that great need to have to convince people that they're in a stressful environment. We all know it. So the events are really focused on very practical, accessible tools. And I think that resonates with people.
Great.
Yeah, I was thinking the showing up in the immediate aftermath of a disaster is a good thing to do and very supportive, but sometimes it takes a really long time to recover. And I really like what you're doing of giving people just acknowledging that the stress just goes on and the anxiety continues when it's been over a year since something happened and you're still hassling with the insurance company or trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, Sam, you hit the nail on the head. We often say that we show up as soon as we can and we stay as long as we're needed. And yeah, people in North Carolina started feeling forgotten after Helene within 3 months. And we just got started. So absolutely, we're there as long as we need to go. And I was on a deployment to Hurricane Sandy, a good 7 years after it hit, still working with people who were still working the long-term recovery. So, and Katrina, for sure. Yeah.
Scott, you didn't ask this question specifically, but just in terms of other trends we're seeing, the other thing that we're seeing, or at least in the last several months, but really for the last several years, are the cumulative impact of multiple events. So it's not just anymore. It's not like that once in a generation flooding event that we're dealing with. It's the flooding event plus decreasing resources within the church, plus the political climate, plus and family things. So more of that kind of cumulative effect of just lots of stuff happening. We really saw that as Kathy said in California, where we sat with people and we said, how you doing? And it was almost like, well, which disaster do you want me to talk about? Immigration, the new administration, the fire, all the above.
So I apologize for coming late. So if you've already covered this, just say so. But I think the work you're doing sounds absolutely delightful and also extremely taxing on the two of you. So how do you two take care of yourself as you take care of all these other people?
Now, that is a great question. You're looking at one of my main supports right now, Jim Kirk. So we talk to each other a lot and have a very good relationship and very honest. So that helps. We've got a great staff that we lean on. And we teach all the time having intentional listening partners, someone who's not a spouse, someone who's not a colleague, probably, that we can talk to at a drop of a hat and vent or get advice or just talk to. I have intentional listening partners. I've got 4, and I use them a lot, and practice what I preach with self-care and all those things. But people are my main source of resilience. Yeah. Jim?
Yeah, I think again, one of the great strengths of this program is we're not teaching a curriculum that somebody taught us. We're teaching based on practice. As Kathy mentioned, we never share a practice in an event that we don't personally use. One of us does not personally use. So this is from experience. We're practicing what we preach. And then I think if you get to experience one of the resilience programs and with the tools that you'll hear about, if you put them into practice, you can maintain a good equilibrium, a good rhythm, even in the midst of a stressful time. I think about it, there are times when God calms the storm, and there are times that God calms us in the midst of the storm. And I think using these practices can help bring a level of calmness in a very chaotic situation. But thank you for asking, Bonnie.
Well, thank you for what you do. And my hope is you'll take really, really, really good care of yourselves, use all those tools so that Larry can go work his magic, or Sam, or who in our presbytery to bring this, to our neck of the woods.
Kathy, perhaps if you put your email address, I think it'll allow you to do that in the chat box. You'll have that front and center.
I will indeed try.
Yeah, and Kathy's just an email or a phone call away.
Yep, or text, depending on the time of day and the time zone we're in. All right, I think it let me put it in. I put the one I use most in the chat, so.
Excellent. Kathy, Jim, thank you for being with us. We're at the end of our time. We really appreciate you being here, and we really appreciate the work you do. Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, for everybody that's on the call, has been very generous with the Presbytery of Utica. Utica, Whitesboro, Dolgeville, and Lowville have all benefited from the work of Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, good to
So
see you.
let's end with a blessing. May you practice a sacred reclamation of all this world was made for: dignity, love, belonging, and delight. May you nurture your own imagination for repair in all forms, and expand with self-compassion in the knowledge that no healing is linear and no reparation final. Amen.
Amen. Blessings all.
Thank
The
you.
Lord be with you.
Right, good to
And
see you.
also with you.
And also with you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.